Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here in North Carolina. If you've missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We are people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a promotional channel, and we are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Be kind and self-governed. And if you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I'm joined on air with Greg Clarkson, regenerative farmer, ASN on Kansas. And we are just waiting for Anna. She's on her way, and she should be joining us any minute now. And how are you doing, Gregory, this afternoon?
Oh, it's a lovely day here. Spring day in Kansas, 3 degrees, 20-mile-an-hour winds, and snow coming down.
I know, right? I mean, and then I think that you said that it's supposed to be like 69 degrees next week or something.
Yeah, I think a week from now, it's in the mid-60s. Yep.
Oh, man. These people really know how to put on a show, don't they?
I'm definitely counting down the days for that. I could do without this cold and wind.
It's 100% like unnatural. And all of these dramatic theatrical weather performances can just, they could just stop. Yeah. Anyway, how are you doing? I know last week you had a lot going on. Is your aunt okay?
Yep. We had an accident in the family, and she's back home, safe and sound, doing good. Very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah. So. Good. Okay. So we are very excited, you guys, to have Anna come on board today. And we want to talk about the American Federation dollar. Right, Gregory?
Yeah. And, I was all caught up on her articles. Mm-hmm. And just before we joined, I happened to check Paul's site, and I noticed a new article. And what is it about? It's about money and fiat and exchange systems. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm dying to read it.
I know, like it's all the articles this week are incredible. It's like Anna got a couple of days to rest and her mind just went, whoa, that yes. She just like, I could just see her typing away, right?
Yep.
Anyway, we want to welcome everybody. We're excited to hear what Anna's going to tell us about the first media blast out, regarding the AFD. So being recognized publicly, that's super exciting. So I think there's a lot of folks who think that when that press release was put out, that we're supposed to join commodity banks. Gregory, what do you think?
Well, so I think what it is St. Crown Exchange, I believe, is where it was the first exchange the AFD is listed on. Mm-hmm. And effectively, it looks to me like that's where anybody could go buy AFD using any number or some, it looks like fiat currencies, USD, Euro, and various fiat currencies. But I would say for all of us, that have the GFG accounts, there's something called Operation Safe Haven, and that's what they have done for us, so that we can, if you really want to take your FRNs and convert them into AFDs, do not do it on an exchange. And maybe Anna will correct me here, but I would do it through the safety vault, as it's called, and because you're going to get a 1-for-1 exchange. You're going to get one AFD for one FRN, and on the St. Crown Exchange, you're going to get one AFD for around 267, I believe it is, FRNs, because that's the exchange rate. So we have this wonderful opportunity. If you really want to exchange FRNs for AFDs, for sure do it through that safety vault. And I can say I've done it. I've seen it in action. I've done two injections just to make sure I understood or comprehend how it works. And it goes into the safety vault. They convert it from the FRNs and, well, in our case, USD, into AFD, and then that gets transitioned over to your Prosperity account. So it's really slick, really easy to do. So why would you go pay 267 FRNs for one AFD when you can pay one FRN for one AFD.
Well, and here's Anna, and she can help clarify all of this.
Yeah.
Oh, I think her connection, she's trying to, is she still connecting? There she is. There she is. Uh-oh. Are you frozen, Anna?
I'm the one that should be frozen. I think she has better weather in Alaska right now.
I know. Last night, I think she had a little bit warmer weather. It looks like she's still trying to connect.
We're going to be like minus 20 tonight.
And we were just at 72 degrees, and now it's like 18.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Cold. That's cold for you.
It is cold for us. I mean, it's not normal at all, and it's super dramatic. Oh, Anna's making it. She's trying.
Okay.
Having some odd tech problems.
And I'll say just along that topic, as recent as I think it was last Thursday, I emailed the GFG organization to make sure that the safety vault was still available, and it is indeed available. I don't know how long it's going to be available. It's not going to be forever. I know that,
right,
but it is still available.
I mean, I know that Anna wants everybody to have access as long as possible. So she's trying, she wants everyone to be able to maintain their parity, which is a really big deal. There she is.
Ah, there you are.
Welcome, Anna.
She's trying to get her audio working now.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Ooh. Okay. I'm here.
Yes, right. You are. Welcome. Hello. Anna, we missed you. We hope you're feeling better. Are you 100%? Or
no,
you're on the way?
100. Not 100. You'll hear it in my voice, but I'm up. I'm rolling.
Well, you sure are writing. That's what we know. We're just looking at all this stuff. I was like, Anna has just got all this information bottled up. She just like going. It's really, really fun to read. But me and Gregory have been dying to talk to you about when the American Federation dollar was launched. And so we were just discussing all of the wonderful things that you've done to help maintain parity for everyone, all of the things that you've just really thought about how to protect us in all the ways possible. And we were discussing the difference between that, because a lot of folks last week when when this article came out, then they misunderstood. I think a lot of people are just, people just need access and help, and there's so much desperation out there. They started trying to open accounts on the St. whatever, what's it called?
St. Crown Exchange.
St. Crown Exchange. And what Greg and I were just discussing is that we're not trying to go there. That's if somebody else is trying to invest in the AFD or purchase AFDs with their currency. We have our banks, and we're not trying to be part of their banks. But it was just very exciting that they've put their press release out that they're going to be starting to trade, AFDs on their exchange.
Right. And we, meantime, are developing our own exchange, and then other exchanges are picking up all over the place. And in that way, you get into circulation, and it becomes a more normalized system than just an in-house trading platform for back and forth for us to be able to work with vendors. There's no real reason why we can't work with vendors anyway. So, it's just a win-win situation to open up and do the exchange. So that's the development of our exchanges where we're at. And so it won't be long before you'll be able to trade anywhere in the world. Now, trade, is different than commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've been doing, they've been forcing us to operate in commerce by limiting the domestic opportunities, the domestic currency, to the Federal Reserve note. Now, they don't really have a legal or lawful way of doing that. It's a monopoly, right? It's been, for lack of anything else coming forward on an official basis, that the Federal Reserve note has been used as it has as a means to create a monopoly. And so the whole Federal Reserve system is both evil and illegal. And so, like a lot of other things, it will be going the way of the dodo bird. But that doesn't mean that we can afford to let our guard down or that we can stop our efforts to have a currency of our own. Because, as we discovered in this process, you must have your own money. You must have your own control of your own money, or you're not functioning as you should as a true sovereign.
Yeah. Well, they've tricked a lot of people. There's a lot of trickery that was going on, especially after the 20s and when they stole everybody's gold and silver. And a lot of folks, that I speak with, Anna, especially over 60, they believe that, oh, the government can just decide if gold is worth something or not anytime they feel like it. And I'm just like, no, that's not true. And they robbed you. But there are very intellectual, highly educated people that have this belief. And it's very difficult, Anna. Like, I show them your book, and I like Greg and I have been talking so much, and we're just like, do you just not believe in law? That's what you're saying? You just don't believe in law? Because you've made it very plain. Like, this is not a point. You say everywhere, this is not a point for people to disagree or argue about. This is the way the world works.
Yeah, it's really, you can disagree all you want, and it's not going to change anything. What you need to do is agree together and work together to assert your sovereignty and take back your birthright. And there are a lot of people standing in the way trying to keep people from doing precisely that. Even though it's our lawful and legal right to do so, they are so entrenched and indoctrinated in the current system, rotten as it is, that they are afraid to reach out and do something different.
Oh my goodness. Anna, listen, sometime, whenever that time was, that men chose man as king, this is what we're trying to unbind. And this is what we try to explain. And then you hear, this thing about, well, no man stands above the law. And then I laugh because I'm like, no, that's not true. Men created laws. They're our laws. So our creation can't stand above us. They can't stand above the creator. And they literally are like deer in headlights going, whoa. You can see them at that point. Anna, they all of a sudden start glitching like, you're like, they go, wait a minute. Something she said. What is that?
Yeah, that little wake up moment, whatever it is, however we provoke it, once it happens, they can't go back. It starts,
That's what's happening it's happening on our assemblies, Anna. It's happening because there's people who are like, well, I've been in the assembly for 7 years. Okay, well, you still never heard Anna say, this is not a point of contention. We are not arguing about this. This is the way it works. This is the law. And these are the things. And so, but what's really fun, Anna, is it's starting to happen. They're starting to go, and you can see them uncorking a little bit, and it's really fun.
Well, and I have to say that all of this material that's being dug up by Doge is having the effect of slapping someone in the face with a wet halibut fillet. They're all standing up and going, oh my, oh, we were funding the Taliban. Well, no wonder that nobody in Washington cared that we left behind $8 billion worth of military grade equipment in Afghanistan, because of course we were funding the Taliban anyway, and the Taliban got the gift of $8 billion worth of military equipment. Yeah, this whole thing is just absolutely crazy. If you step back and you look at how this has been mismanaged, and the members of Congress don't want this to come back to them, but that's where it rightly belongs. I
Yeah.
mean, it's outrageous that none of the presidents really dug into this. But when you go back and you look at how it developed, it was the Congress that made the appropriations and then just let them, fly and provided no oversight for how it was actually spent. So I think that once again, the members of Congress have got a huge, incredible debt to pay to the people of this country for their bad faith and mismanagement.
I love the straight talk, the real talk in the latest articles, like just ironing this out. Anyone who isn't, but I'm also watching people literally glitch over it, Anna. They're just like, that's not true. Last week when you were out, I was telling everybody about how, Anna's always saying, listen, we have to come away from evil. And the government and the law, these man's laws, this is evil because it's trying to constrict other people. And then they're like, but Anna's talking about the law. And I'm like, right, because men chose men as their kings. And until we can unbind all of that and get to the moment where we can finally just choose God as our king and get past all of this, there's a process for all of this. And you've been explaining it till you're blue in the face, Anna. And I know it took time for me to comprehend it and for a lot of other people too. And you listen, and unless they keep reading it over and over again. I mean, I read your book. This is the third time that I'm reading it again, because every single time it's after a little bit of time has passed and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? Oh, how did I miss that? But now we've been talking long enough. And then I'm like, wait a second. Of course. Duh. Here's the other rest of the proof there. So I really encourage everybody to read Disclosure 101, maybe once a month, just to see what you're catching up with, because I look at it and I go, duh, Anna wrote it all out the first time. Even your, for anybody out there, if you haven't read the Jural Assembly Handbook that Anna wrote, I don't know why anybody's rewriting this. Outside of correcting the dated parts and pieces of it.
Yeah, there are some parts and pieces that need to be updated and corrected. Yeah. Because at the time we wrote that, we were still under the idea or the impression that the state rules were applied to the states, and they weren't. Because they kept calling Confederate states states. And Confederate states are not states.
Right.
But, what they were talking about wasn't clear within the context of the historical material we had. And then we got it later. Later we figured out what was going on. So there are some corrections to that. It does need to be updated. But anyway, you're right. And the exact spot where that happened was when the Israelites went to the prophet Samuel and demanded that he appoint a king over them, like the Canaanites had. So they were adopting a pagan foreign tradition. Kings were the tradition of the surrounding people, the Canaanites and Amorites and others that were living in the area around where the Israelites were encamped. And so that's exactly where that happened. And it's interesting because God kind of mocked them for it. He basically said, oh, you want a king? Here. Here's King Saul. Have fun, kids. And the plain fact is that we as living beings have rather limited abilities. We can't answer most of the questions that there are. We can't answer how. We can't answer when. We can't answer why very well. We can't answer where very well. Most of the time, we're doing our best shot is to define what. Of all the questions there are, the one that we can reliably define is what. We can define what we want. We can define what we think. We can define.
Some people can't. Right now, they've been so out of practice with that, and that's where we're encouraging them. And a lot of folks really get angry, they get stressed out. There's a lot of, anxiety about that, and that's the part that is really sad and hard to watch. And we're trying to develop that in people because they've never been allowed to do. The orthodoxy's done a really, really good job not allowing them to know what they want and why they want it.
Well, and think of it this way. We have been totally surrounded by a nanny state. And now the nanny state is going away.
Yep.
And a lot of people are responding like little kids, like a 4-year-old whose nanny suddenly walked out of the room and they're left alone and they're going,
Mm-hmm.
And it will take a while for them to find their legs and to, put on their big boy pants and realize that, no, they don't need the nanny.
Right.
And this is a realization that's coming on them whether they want it or not, because somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of what we identified as the government is going away. It's just flat going away because, the USA Inc. cannot possibly sustain the costs of the United States Corp for any length of time. And they have got to do this gigantic cut, not only of government personnel, but government services.
Mm-hmm.
So, suddenly they're not going to be spending all of that money into our economy, and they're not going to be spending it into the economies of all these other countries that have been freeloading on us. And, on one hand, it's good to save that money and to put it to good use instead of frittering it away on politicized garbage, right? But on another front, it's going to have this giant sucking sound on the economy because all these people are going to hit the bricks out and be looking for work on the street, and because all of that spending, all that deficit spending won't be going on.
Yep.
Now, so Trump is trying to counteract that effect by putting people to work on construction projects. Things like these new canal projects and oil expansion and all that sort of stuff. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that. He can moderate the effect, but I don't think that amount of deficit spending can be counterbalanced by, other forms of like infrastructure spending that he's contemplating. I think that what we need to do and what they are coming to is our vision, which is, okay, well, now we dig into our prepaid credit and we use that. We front our gold standard money and we use that. And that's how we buoy everyone up over the transition strip, if you will, of going from this huge overinflated federal government to being something that is stripped down and actually performing as it should.
It's interesting. I mean, what a time to introduce real trade. I mean, thank you for introducing the American Federation dollar, which is asset-backed and a tradable money, which is not what an FRN is. It's obviously backed by nothing, and it's not tradable. It's commerce.
Well, it's not even a negotiable instrument.
Yeah,
it's not even a commercial script, really. It's not a negotiable instrument. So, it's nothing. It's literally worthless. And people, have got their lives savings wrapped up in something. I mean, when you have a federal judge tell you that a person cannot be held accountable for theft if they walk into your hotel room and steal $100,000,
Right.
then
This lack of education is the biggest issue. One of my favorite things on your Monday night was when you were just like, praise the Lord, we are no longer funding the education system, which was a total fart.
Indoctrination system.
Yeah, the indoctrination system. So you got Linda here, for example, saying, she's been trying to share information on the bankruptcy. This is all of us. Okay. We're trying to share information of the bankruptcy to the municipal corporation. They don't believe any of us. As far as the official documents, I don't know what you can suggest. I go back to the education of your literature. Like I share your books, I share the letters, the exchanges that you have with the Pope and in your articles. What do you suggest, Anna?
Well, Pope Francis actually caused or dictated this bankruptcy back in 2015, I believe. And so you'd have to go to the Vatican website where they have their newsroom and news archives and go back and start digging through there. He made a very brief statement. And
small, brief statement, so no one really would notice it. But it's there.
Sort of a one sentence, and it was, and the thing that was interesting about it at the time was that it was so underplayed. It was so understated. And it was just an announcement that the United States corporation was being bankrupted in a Chapter 7 involuntary bankruptcy action. And, the U.S. Corp was huge. So this was actually a giant announcement, but it was just, like a very skinny little paragraph. And it began it actually began under Obama's administration. And Trump, the first time around, inherited the backwash from that. And then, of course, we had the 4 years of Joe Biden while they were going through the claims process and all the various other things that go into it. And now we're finally 10 years later at the stage where they have to go through and audit all the departments and agencies so that they can settle the bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is being administered through the District of Columbia. That's another reason why we don't see it. It's literally a foreign bankruptcy and is taking place in the District of Columbia, so it's not listed. And it's a bankruptcy that is taking place under treaty instead of what we think of as a normal bankruptcy court, because it's a parent corporation. It's not all of the subsidiaries. So when you look at all of these weird things that go on with this, the two places to look are the District of Columbia Supreme Court and the information that was published by the Vatican at the time. Anyway, this is not at all unusual. The tradition has been for them to declare bankruptcy among themselves at the Geneva Conventions. So that's another place where you can look. In the minutes of the Geneva Conventions that took place around 2015, you'll find that they had to go through some sort of a negotiation with the other members of the G7, or maybe it's the G20 now. I don't know if they've increased the number of participants in this procedure where they go bankrupt by agreement. But if this followed the same process, then you're going to find it at the Geneva Conventions, where in the minutes of the conventions, they'll have a meeting, a sidebar meeting, not the main meeting convention, but the other little meetings that take place off on the sides at a convention.
Mm-hmm.
and you'll find it there. When we were looking for the 1933, when we went back and were doing the 1930s, that's where we found it in the May 1930 Geneva Convention minutes. You find the 5 different countries went bankrupt altogether, or 5 corporations that were representing 5 different countries all went bankrupt together at the May 1930 Geneva Conventions. And interestingly enough, guess who was our representative at that event? Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
Yeah.
who 3 years later turns up as the new president, right?
Yep.
So yeah, this is power brokering at a high level, and
Wow.
they bankrupt these corporations so that they can throw the debts off onto the public, onto the people, and so they then allege these debts against each and every one of us as franchises, right? Or presumed franchises. And they go through this whole turkey trot of first of all causing the debt, second of all going bankrupt to protect themselves from the debt they created, and number 3, throwing that debt off onto the backs of the American people.
So then this is a good question. Road to Ruins is wondering if we enjoy superior general concurrent jurisdiction, can we take corrupt de facto agents to lien based on grand jury ruling from our courts?
Well, certainly, but it's sort of useless to lien them because they don't have anything anyway. We're the owners. We're the actual owners, and these guys have been weaseling in as middlemen and going, hey, we're representing them. Well, now what happens when we step up and present ourselves? Suddenly this throws a real carrot in the mix, where they're wondering what to do. All of a sudden the Americans wake up and show up in their own behalf. Then suddenly all this representation that we've been suffering kind of takes the back seat.
Right. So then this is basically what you're saying, Anna, is they just need to give us our credits and stop with the nonsense. We don't need to do this.
Well, if you noticed, I published a little article this past week, and at the back, down toward the end of it, I'm talking about Secretary of the Treasury Besant, and he's talking about how within the next year they're going to open up the positive side of the U.S. ledger, and that's going to solve everything. Well, and I'm standing here going, hey, wait a minute. Our assets are on your ledger because of your fraud against us. We want our assets backed off that ledger right now so that we can use our own assets to fund our own bank and our own government. Thank you very much. And so they are aware of the positive side of the ledger, but they're trying to claim it's a U.S. ledger, that those assets are U.S. assets, and they're not. They're our assets.
I'll bet they do want to claim that. Yeah.
That's the key is, to establish that bank, to establish that trade based on assets, our assets. I think so many people want to sort of reshuffle the old system, but we can't. We can't do that.
No.
So, there was an interesting story in The Creature from Jekyll Island. C. Edward Griffith wrote that, and one of them that sticks out to me was back in the colonies' time, there was the Massachusetts dollar, which was nothing more than a fiat paper currency. And I think the Brits told them they needed to do away with that. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but anyway, the currency was taken away, and the economy fell apart. But you know what? They established a new economy based on gold and silver, and it recovered, if I remember right, within 2 to 3 years. And it was stronger 2 to 3 years later. So, and that's happened over and over. there's proof that if you put things back on asset-based, asset-backed, backed by something, that the trade will come back. You'll go through a downtime, of course, but it will come back, and it'll come back much stronger. So, I'm optimistic in that regard.
Well, gold and silver have been the chosen means of a commodity-based economy for a long, long, long time.
That's right.
We did something different when we used petroleum as the basis, but it's still a commodity-backed dollar.
Yep.
So people who think that just because the FRN, which is our, being used as our domestic currency, think that the dollar is not sound should rethink that.
Right.
We've always had an asset-backed currency, whether it was the gold dollar, the silver dollar, or the petrodollar.
Yep.
We've always had asset-backed international currency. So
just not domestically.
just not domestically. And so internationally, we've always had asset-backed money, and we will continue to have asset-backed money. But I think people should be prepared for a big shock that there is no gold in Fort Knox unless gold has been hurriedly shipped in to Fort Knox, because all the gold that we had in Fort Knox was offshored.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, American gold has been offshored since the 1860s. They started right after the hostilities in the Civil War ended, and the U.S. Navy started shipping gold from our country to repositories all over the world, but specifically and most of all to the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And the Philippines had been acting as a gold repository for centuries. The Philippines was acting as a gold repository back during the days of the Spanish galleons. So the Philippines had a well-established trade, and so did Indonesia, in gold, and a lot of the refineries of gold are in Indonesia. That's where they take gold to be smelted and to be assayed and to be purified and, to cast into bars and hallmarked and all of that. A lot of that takes place in Indonesia. Now, who knew, right? But it does. And it has for many centuries. Indonesia has had that business, and the Philippines has had the bulk of the business for storing gold.
Right.
And so they began offshoring our gold for quote unquote safekeeping. And it got really very ferocious right around 1900, 1901, 1904, at the same time that the insular tariff cases were being tried in the Supreme Court. They were upping up the transport of gold out of this country to offshore locations. And all of this was done by the U.S. Navy. And so the Navy has the records and the receipts. The gold was offshored in the Philippines primarily, but there were clumps of gold going all over the place. And so we have the records of that. We know basically what the rationale was. Right after the Civil War, they began this quote unquote corporate government system here. And when they did that, they created a corporation in Scotland in 1868, calling itself the United States of America. And then they just gratuitously omitted the word incorporated. So they basically stole our identity at that point and began accessing our credit like a credit card hacker would do by impersonating the victim. And by the early 1900s, this had worn thin because they had, from 1865 to 1900, they'd had 35 years in which to spend. And they did. They spent wildly. And by the early 1900s, it was beginning to wear thin, and the other countries were beginning to notice that something was wrong, and that they had overspent so wildly that it no longer made sense. And so, as other countries were digging down into this and figuring out that this was a corporation and wasn't actually the government of our country, they bankrupted it. So in 1906, things kind of came push to shove, and by 1907, they were in full-on bankruptcy. And by 1913, they were coming out of the bankruptcy, and that's when we had the Federal Reserve thing. So all of that was that first bankruptcy of the Scottish interloper, as we call it, that was formed in Scotland in 1868. So again, this concerned a private corporation that was owned by the multimillionaires of that era, who were like our billionaires today. A consortium. We've got news stories from, like, the New York Post, that kind of thing, where there were the big newspapers of the day covered the acquisition of the United States by these billionaires. Yep. Carnegie and Vanderbilt and all of these guys got together, and they fronted a new corporation, and they then came forward and had the old corporation in receivership, and they just spun off from there. So all this time we've been dealing with corporations acting as our government, and the ownership of the corporations and where they are registered and everything else has changed time after time. But anyway, it was during that period for that first bankruptcy preparation where they began taking American gold offshore for quote unquote safekeeping, so that it would not be seized upon as part of the bankruptcy. So they were considering that to be part of the U.S. trust.
Interesting. So the corporation that was created coming out of the 1913 time, is it the same corporation that went bankrupt then in 1930, just 17 years later?
Well, they've got multiple corporations going by this time, okay. And they're kind of trading off.
Okay.
First they bankrupt the United States of America Incorporated with a small th. That's right. The one that went bankrupt in 1933.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
But then they already had another version of the United States of America with a capital T, upper lowercase, Incorporated, that was going, that was the one that was bankrupted in 1953.
Okay.
And that's where the IMF got its foot in the door.
Yep.
And then you have yet another version of the USA Inc. They went from one representation to another representation. They called it the USA Inc. Okay. So that's what replaced the 1930s version of the small THE United States of America Inc. And every time this happens, a group of very wealthy individuals gets together and they front another version of the corporation. And right now we found out that Donald Trump and his consortium, which now includes Elon Musk and Larry Edelson and Peter Thiel and some of these other lesser known but fabulously wealthy billionaires got together and created the United States of America LLC, which has been registered in London. So, once again, we're seeing the same, process of the old corporation is being bankrupted. They're trying to throw the debts off onto the American people. Another fabulously wealthy consortium of billionaires has gotten together and they're fronting another corporation, whether it's an LLC or a foundation or whatever they want to take, whatever form of corporation they want to take is immaterial. and they're now fronting another version of some sort of thing that will be called like the United States Republic, I think is what they're going to try to do. But they'll come up with some name that makes people think that this is the legitimate government, when in fact it's just a commercial corporation in the business of providing governmental services. And this is the part of it that people have got to understand. They have to understand that those constitutions are service contracts. They set up the structure of the entity that is going to be providing the service, and they stipulate what the services are, and they stipulate who's going to pay for the services and how, in what means or what species that payment is going to be made. And one of the odd things that people never catch on reading the federal constitutions, any of them, well, number one, most people think there's only one constitution.
Right.
But if they were really paying attention, they would see that there's the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Two separate constitutions, which are still being published today.
Mm-hmm.
And you can walk down to a bookstore and you can get a copy of the United States and a copy of the United States of America constitutions. So it should be obvious, at least from that there's more than one federal constitution. And when you get back into the history, you find that there were actually three.
Right.
Okay, but people are so glazed over, and so they're not taking care of business. They're not paying attention to their own business, and that's why it's being usurped upon. But anyway, if you look at the Constitution, one of the things that you're going to see, any Constitution, the British Territorial Constitution, the Municipal Constitution, or the original Federal Constitution, doesn't matter what you look at, it's going to say the same thing. And it's going to say that the states can make no form of money except gold and silver.
Yep.
Okay, that's us. That's the states. We have to pay our debt to them in gold and silver.
Yep.
And they, in turn, have to operate on our credit. Okay, they can't just create money out of thin air themselves.
Right.
Okay. Now, the other thing that is difficult for them is that it's our Congress, our American subcontractors Congress, that's supposed to hold the purse strings, not theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've, contrived to get around this, but at the bottom of it, it's still fraud that they're substituting their Congress for our Congress, and they're making appropriations of our credit without our authority to do so.
I like your analogy you had here this past week or last week on, imagine you're a store owner and you have employees. The owner is financing the store, making the decisions on what gets spent, the priorities on what gets done, and the employees do the work.
Right.
They're just simply our employees. It's
right.
Our money. It's our decisions. It's our priority. They work for us.
Right.
And that's such a, the indoctrination, people have such a chasm to get from where they are to that level of understanding, which is really simple, but there's such a chasm there.
Well, it's Anna, it's just business. Like,
Yeah.
Even when you're getting pulled over, even when they are charging you with a crime, it's a bill, like it's, about money. And
Yeah.
so the courts are the enforcement of our freedom or the restriction of that or the violation. This is where, what did Anna say to everybody? Get the courts up.
Get your courts up.
She only asked us she only wrote the General Assembly Handbook. Hello? Because we need that, because that's the enforcement, and that is what supports and brings forward the banks.
Well, and it also, it brings forward people law. And people law is extremely different than corporate law.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need that. And
Right.
we need that for our own protection. And we need that to have a sane situation here. They created a false world a legal world that is not a lawful world, but a fictional world. And they imposed it upon us using various practical tricks, one of which was the Federal Reserve note that forced everybody to appear to function voluntarily in commerce. Well, why was that important? Number one, uh, it was important because the federal government has control over what? Interstate commerce. So that gave them a hook to be able to interfere in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Just
the
like
key.
with just like with the new digital currency thing.
Yeah, it's
Anna,
really the
let's
key to it all because it controls what people
yeah.
were able to acquire. Just a day-to-day living. It controlled all of that. So it was the key that made it work for them. That's why I believe our bank is the key to break away from that. We can't do it without the bank.
Right. We
And
can't do it without our own currency, without our own bank, without our own treasury.
Right.
And so that's why the emphasis on getting all of that set up.
Yep.
mhm.
And then also, we um, we can't do it without our own courts.
Right.
We need
Which
we
brings
need
us to this too, right? See, this is everybody's having all these conversations, and I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it all up because you're talking about it and they're not hearing it. And then I'm tying it all together for them because it's all the same conversation.
well, people aren't understanding that there are two completely separate uh, ways to exchange.
Right.
Now, two different exchange systems in the world. You've got the asset-backed system, which uses gold and silver and petroleum and whatever other commodities.
Mhm.
Asset-backed exchanges, which are international trade. Okay, you've got that over here, and then you've got the commercial system that we've been basically forced to use, and that is all based on commercial paper, on credits and debts.
Yep.
Okay, so even though we've been using a commercial system all these years, people still haven't really got it in their head. This is a paper system that's foreign from the asset-backed system, and that's something fundamental that they have to get through their brains before this is going to make sense, because they'll keep making assumptions about the paper as if it were asset backed, and they'll keep making assumptions about the asset backed as if it were paper. And they
Mhm.
have to get those two things separate. Okay, so when we're talking prepaid credit, we're talking about commerce. We're talking about a system that can interface with the system that you've been using. Okay, we're talking about essentially a gift card. Okay, if you think about a gift card, right? You go to Walmart and it's December 24th and you have to get a quick gift and you just can't figure out what to buy for somebody. So you get them what? You get them a gift card. You take the card up to the cashier, you hand over the cashier enters the magic numbers on the little gift card, and there you have it. You have a card and it has a set amount, $100 or whatever you're going to gift to your friend, who can then use that gift card like a credit card, right? All right, everybody understands that. Prepaid credit is the same thing. You've already prepaid for that credit card, for that credit. And you've prepaid it by paying debts that you didn't owe. Okay? You and your grandparents and your great grandparents have been paying for multiple generations on mortgages that were owed by the Queen of England. Okay? You've been paying property taxes on property that was yours. Okay? You've been bilked into paying federal income taxes, and in most cases, you don't have a dollar's worth of federal income. Okay, all of this has just been built right out of you. And so when justice comes around, guess what? That results in a huge amount of prepaid credit that you've already paid for. with goods and services,
So,
actual goods and services.
so if I look at the AFD, we can look at it a couple of directions, like the direction you're describing, which is a prepaid, like a gift card.
No, separate.
Well, okay, so that's what I want to kind of dig into. So when I look at the AFD, that's a certificate that I could go exchange for gold because it's
Right.
backed by real gold.
Yep.
And then just in trade, I would rather trade AFDs if I'm going to go buy a new tractor and I go up to the tractor dealership. Do I want to haul a bunch of gold bars in the back of my truck to pay for the tractor? No. I want to hand them, this AFD, this certificate that is backed by gold. And if somebody chooses to, they could go exchange it for the gold. But I don't want to haul the gold around.
Right.
So that's one aspect. Now, this prepaid credit is the way I look at it is more kind of like a stopgap system while we're transitioning back to trade.
No,
Okay.
they're two entirely different systems that operate on different premises and use different little tokens or pieces of paper or whatever you're going to use. The asset-backed system results in international trade. The credit system results in commerce.
Okay.
And they just kind of arbitrarily make that distinction, right? So if you're trading with actual goods and actual services over here in the international trade bin, okay, then you're using AFD and you're using United States silver coins. All those sorts of things are over here in this bin. And if you're using prepaid credit or Federal Reserve notes or euros or anything of that sort, then you're over in this other bin, this other system. And both systems exist. And the way they've messed everything up, it is good for people to be able to participate in this commercial system without being commercial themselves. Yeah. Now, the way that this all got messed up is that living people are not eligible to participate in commerce because we're not incorporated entities. Okay. So that's why they had to drum up this whole business of the franchise and the enfranchisement and bringing us into that foreign jurisdiction so that we would be part of a commercial system and they could use commercial paper as money instead of money. Yeah. All right. Well, now we've built up this huge amount of prepaid credit so that we can go in as third parties and participate because it's prepaid. It's already prepaid in actual goods and services.
Right.
So even our credit is asset-based.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So we're completely in the clear. We're not asking for credit. We're not asking somebody to, oh, please, Mr. Banker, give us $130,000 of our own credit and charge us for the privilege. We're not doing that anymore. We're over here. We've got trillions of dollars of credit that's been prepaid with actual goods and services. And we're just showing up with our little prepaid credit card and saying, okay, well, we already paid you for this. So, now we're taking back some of that. And so our prepaid credit shows up as a debit, but it's a debit against a vast amount of credit that's already been paid for with goods and services.
A small portion of that shows up as the national debt, right? The 36 trillion.
Right.
But that's just a small portion that's captured.
Right.
But we're canceling it out as we apply the credit. We're doing them a favor. We're trying to help them. Well, we're kind of washing it out, right? Like they have to.
We are canceling some of the national debt as we do this, but right. the amount of the debt is so much more because if you really stop and start thinking about what you see every day. I know it's a painful thing. It's actually it's like we've got a built-in switch that won't let us look. Okay, but when you stop and you think about it, go back over what happens at Joe's Hamburger Shop. Remember when I did the Joe's Hamburger Shop articles
Mhm.
That goes over the process by which we trade actual goods and services for an IOU. Well, what happens to that IOU? Follow the process from the printing press forward.
Right.
What happens first? Well, the Federal Reserve note is printed en masse by these big printing presses and using engraving plates, and that it's cut into these bills, right? And they're denominated anywhere from 1 to 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 to 100, right? Right? We're all familiar with this. Each one of those bills costs the same exact amount of money to print. They all cost about 4 cents to print. Okay? So the very first time that that bill hits the economy and gets exchanged, what happens? Well, the bank receives back 96 cents profit on a dollar bill. It receives back $4.96 on a $5 bill. It receives back $9.96 profit, pure profit, on the $10 bill. It receives back $19.96 pure profit on every $20 bill. It receives back $49.96 on every $50 bill. And it receives back $99.96 on every $100 bill. And that is called seigniorage. And that is a big, big, big clump of money as pure profit that should be going into your hands, and which you should be printing your own damn money. But instead it goes to the Federal Reserve. So they more than fabulously made out on just the seigniorage alone. They are owed less than nothing.
This isn't trillions. This is quadrillions.
Well, yeah, over the times.
Wait, the story gets better or worse on how you're looking at this. Okay, so now you take this $10 bill and it's an IOU. It's not really backed by anything.
Right.
It doesn't have like $10 worth of grain or $10 worth of oil or $10 worth of anything in back of it. It's an IOU. It's a promissory note. That's why it's called a Federal Reserve note. It's a promissory note. All right, it's an IOU. Okay, so you walk into a store and you give them this promissory note, and they give you whatever it is you're buying. They give you 2 gallons of milk. They give you a log of cheese, whatever it is that you're buying. They give you something physical and real, substantial, something of substance in exchange for your IOU. All right. Well, now the bank has received through you something of substance for nothing.
Yep.
I mean, for something that's already been paid for, that costs them nothing, less than nothing. They something worth $10, something of substance worth $10 has suddenly been received, right?
Yep.
All right. But it doesn't stop there. If it just stopped with that one transaction, it would already have scammed out, $10 worth of something substantial, either, goods or services, for nothing in exchange for a piece of paper, right?
Mhm.
All right. Every time that cycle repeats, the debt grows, the IOU debt grows.
Yep.
And every time something of substance, something, real, either goods or services, is received in exchange.
Yep.
Okay, so suddenly it's not just that $9.96 that they got back as seigniorage. It's not just that lump of cheese that they got back in exchange the first time around. It's every time that bill is circulated and goes through a transaction throughout its entire life. And how many times can a $10 bill be exchanged in the course of the bill's lifetime. You know,
Okay.
how many times
More than we wanted it to be.
Well, but can we just look at like the money supply times velocity? To get some. I mean, because that's really what you're talking about. There's a given amount of money or well, I say money. I shouldn't say money. There's a given amount of
paper.
notes.
IOUs? Yes.
IOUs. Yeah, the
In
money
circulation.
supply is not the right term to use. IOU supply. How about we say that? There's so many IOUs floating around out there, and then there's a velocity to them. You know, how often or how quickly are they exchanged? And if you think about that, if the IOU supply is in the trillions and the velocity is, any substantial amount at all, you get to very large numbers very quickly.
What about the ones that are just on the ledger, Anna? What about the ones
Yeah.
that don't even make it into your hand? And then listen, I put this up here because this is the problem. No one is comprehending, Anna, that in order for this operation to move forward, that there's an order for the actual prosperity union or bank or whatever you want to call it. Okay, call it whatever you like. The prosperity union, the way that we are going to get our relief, okay, that process has to operate in some order. This is business, everybody. This is all about business. And so there's this statement: prosperity unions are for prepaid credit, but the QR code, no, prosperity unions would be to also physically house the real gold and silver or anything that someone wants to exchange, not just credit, which is on a ledger. And see, look at all this being convoluted: the QR code, the prepaid credit, the prosperity, all of it. And I'm
It's all confused.
right. So please, can you clean it all up? Because they don't want to hear it from me. They need to hear it from you.
Well, the concept of a prosperity union is to replace both banks and credit unions and to have one kind of one-stop shopping for both the asset-backed money for international trade purposes and the commercial system, which is for us prepaid credit. And then the backside of the shop, so to speak, would be where you would go when you wanted to buy something like a house or a car or a college, education for your child. You would not be taking that out of your individual personal account. You'd go around the back of the building and there'd be this entire suite of service available so that you could, imagine this. You want to buy a new house. You just had twins and suddenly your old house isn't big enough anymore, all right? So you want to buy a new house. And so you go to this service center at the Prosperity Union, and you can think of it like a combined bank and credit union facility, right? You walk around the back and you have this entire office that's there to help you get through the process of buying a new house. Well, you describe the house you want. Here's the location. Here's how much they're asking for it. And so then the Prosperity Union sends out a team of inspectors, and they crawl all over the house and they make sure that the house is what it should be. And they detect any problems or things that you might be concerned about or things that might need to be replaced. They discuss all this with you, and you have a very firm idea of what you're getting and what you're paying for and what you're not getting and what you may need. Okay. Oh, it's a great house. It doesn't have gutters. You may want to put on a new gutter system. It's a great house, but the roof is 20 years old and it's beginning to show wear, and you may have to put on a new roof. Blah, 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 blah. All of those things get discussed, and they get discussed with the seller as well as the buyer, okay? So everybody knows exactly what the deal is, and then you get the transfer of credit, prepaid credit, or you get the transfer of AFD, whichever one is being used in that transaction, and you go forward complete, as a complete package. I mean, if you need a roof, the roof is included as part of the entire transaction. And once you walk out of there, you've got your grant, you've got your patent, you've got your title, you got all these things in one handy little package, and you're free and clear. You just walk out of there and it's done. There's no mortgage, there's no anything about it. It has been paid for. And the only part of that the prosperity union has in terms of regulating and monitoring and all of that stuff is to make sure that you're not getting ripped off, and to make sure that you have enough money to actually be able to, put the new roof on, or whatever else it is that needs to be done. Maybe you need new plumbing. Maybe you need a better electrical system. Whatever it is, they want to make sure that when the deal is done, you walk out of there with the house that you think you're getting, and that you have it complete. That that all of the parts of it are the way they should be. So anyway, you'll have these prosperity unions that will replace banks and credit unions for your use, for your purposes as an American. Okay. Now, it's a little bit bizarre for people to think about, but you've got basically two kinds of transactions. You've got debt credit transactions, and you've got actual asset transactions. And either one can work for what you're doing. But everybody
I was thinking about that, Anna, as you were describing. Let's say I'm selling the house and you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an American State National, you're an American State National. We each have prosperity union accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I would think in that scenario, you would pay me an AFD.
Well, if you wanted to be paid an AFD, yeah.
I guess if I asked, if I wanted to be paid, yeah.
And if you wanted to be paid in credit, prepaid credit, then you can be paid in prepaid credit. It would depend upon your own situation and what you wanted to do, and
okay.
As a vendor, as the seller of the house is the vendor in the situation, the vendor always gets to choose how they want to be paid.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anna, it's been well over an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And we will just keep talking to you because, we miss you and we have so many things that we want to talk about. And so I'm trying to respect your time, even though I really don't want to say goodbye to you today. Not yet. But listen.
Lisa's sitting there like this going,
hey, it's okay. We all got craziness going on. Anna, it was 69 degrees this weekend. We're about to have a snowstorm tomorrow. They won't stop spraying. I have lots of beautiful pictures to send you.
It's 3 degrees here, Anna, and snow's falling like crazy. I feel like I'm in Alaska right now.
And if I were to take a picture out my front window right now, you would see that we almost have no snow.
Oh, wow.
Weird. So what they what they're doing is they turn it into the trees budding because it's like spring. And then all of a sudden it's like -10. And we're just like, what?
All they're doing right now is manipulating the jet stream.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
We agree with you. We agree.
And the chemtrails are scheduled to cease, but most of those programs are front loaded so that they have 2-3 months of extra funding to keep going during bumps in the road, so to speak. So
they must not care as much about us here. We had some beautiful skies this past week. Right after your article came out, I went out. I was outside all day, and I didn't see one trail.
And we were like pressured down to the ground. And I think they funded us till they definitely what they want to do here, Anna, is make sure there's no growing season. So they ruin the winter so that everything's because they want to starve Americans out because, we don't have eggs, Anna. Did you know?
These people are insane, and they're being tracked down. They're being tracked and they're being disposed of.
Right.
And their
And
funding is being cut.
yeah. So like Laura's saying, where do you find the patent number if you're a transhuman? I mean, look, these people are crazy.
Yeah. I published the DARPA patent number in an article a long time ago when all this was first booting up.
Okay.
DARPA is the principal end-line patent owner. But we need to get into the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and just absolutely make mayhem of them. We need to, dissolve all criminal patents and all patents that have been used to commit crimes.
Mhm.
And as far as being transhuman, you're not transhuman just because somebody says so.
No.
Don't accept any labels from these bastards.
No.
These people don't deserve the time of day. And their ideas don't deserve the time of day.
Your favorite statement last night about that was that, oh, shockingly, the results are exactly what their labs have done. Because you know what, friends? Nature has this all figured out too. So there is a way for nature to be combating all of this, and there are solutions for that. So, we must continue to have belief in Mother Nature too.
Right, and a patent isn't going to protect a crime.
Right.
Not on my watch. It's not.
Right.
You can just take all that garbage and all those thoughts of being a transhuman and chuck it in the wastebasket, because on top of everything else, we outlawed it in this country. We outlawed it outright, right out of the box. We passed the first public law in 100 years and said no to GMO claims against people.
Right. Well,
I really do have to get going. I have 10
That's
minutes
right.
between shows here. So
no, we love you.
Tell the GFG folks, that whole team, thank you. A huge thank you for all they're doing. I know that's an enormous task they have, but this is the key to it all. So just please pass along our thank you to them.
Yes, we love them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Anna.
You guys.
We'll see you guys next week.
Guys. Bye.